Hi everyone, my name is Jeremy and this is Red Beans Recording Modular. In front of us we have the new module from Intellijel, Multigrain. Multigrain is a granular sampler. Instead of processing in real time like an effect, you record into it or prepare samples for its SD card and play them back in a variety of ways. Each of the green numbered buttons on the bottom of the module are a slot for a sample that you can load from your recordings, a bank of WAV files you create, or projects that you curate. You can have up to 48 projects, and each one of these can have 8 sets of samples or presets with a variety of settings. Each sample can be around 30 seconds long at 48 kilohertz, 16-bit stereo. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 2, 3. Multigrain uses granular synthesis to play back its sounds, meaning a sample is broken down into tiny slices or grains. The rate these grains play back, the length and the direction and speed of these grains, and the speed and direction of the playhead that moves through the sample are all variables you get to play with to make new sounds. There's also a built-in reverb called Blur for space and depth. Granular is great at making glittering soup out of anything, but it's also great at making rhythmic content out of non-rhythmic content, like pads and sustained notes. One of the standout features of Multigrain is the crossfader, which allows you to morph between 2 different sets of settings for each sample. You can morph between large and small grain sizes, sample direction, reverb and level amounts, and even how much of the internal random modulation or the 3 X, Y, and Z input modulation sources apply to each knob. You can also quantize the pitch of the grain playback to a custom scale, meaning Multigrain can generate harmonically coherent clusters of grains with its built-in random control. In this video, I'll show you how Multigrain works, and then we'll run through a bunch of example patches of stuff I found fun and cool while getting to know it. Check the chapter markers if you want to skip around. Thanks to Intellijel for sponsoring this video, and let's get started with Multigrain. In order to get to know Multigrain, we'll start by recording the Atlantics into it as a new sample in a brand new project. I'll make a new project, and even though I'm playing the Atlantics, we're not hearing it. That's because I need to hit the through button on Multigrain to activate passing the input to the output. With that activated, now if I play, we'll hear the input source. We can apply Multigrain's reverb to our input source in real time, which is nice. To capture a sample, I'll hit this button right here. But first, let me create a sequence real quick. Okay, so here's our sequence. We'll record this. I'll press the button to start and again to stop. Now I need to choose which slot to drop the recorded WAV file into. I'll choose the first one. Now I'll hit latch and press that slot's button to trigger the sample, and there is our recording. I'll turn off through for right now so we can just play with this. Rate is how fast the module gets new grains, and size is the duration of those grains. Start is the beginning of the sample you can generate grains from, and you can pass through the whole sample with the start knob, which will come into play later. The wrap knob sets the wrap point for the scanning playhead, which is to isolate areas of the sample for scanning, which you can then move around with start. Scan can be thought of as a playhead that moves through the sample either forward or backward, and you control the speed by how much scan. At noon, the playhead doesn't move at all, and grains are generated from whatever point you're currently parked at. Our shape is the shape of the grains, which will change the vibe of playback a lot. Blur is our reverb. We have a level control for gain structure and automation. The next 3 knobs are linked to each other by default, meaning rate and size and pitch share a relationship that can keep the sound in a particular pocket as you adjust them. This can be useful for some sounds, but I found myself almost always unlinking them, which allowed me to dive into some more complex sound design. Let's add some sea legs. Oh, that's nice. We can reverse our grains by clicking this reverse button. But if you want to reverse the whole sample playback, turn scan to the left. One cool thing is that you can sync the grain generation to an external clock. We have a clock signal going into the sync input, which is an input-sensitive jack that will know when it's getting a signal. If we turn sync on by hitting Alt plus latch, our rate becomes a divider and multiplier of the clock signal. I don't know about you, but I love that. Also, hey, we have a tone control that acts as a DJ-style low-pass, high-pass filter. Let's go ahead and quantize our pitch. If we hit Alt plus Quant, we bring up a keyboard and can choose notes we want our grains to quantize to. I'll choose the tonic, the fourth, and the fifth. Now, as I turn the pitch knob, you'll hear the pitch lock to those notes. If we hit random and turn any knob, we'll apply a per grain creation random value to that knob. If you add random to the start time, you create the concept of spray, while the start time is jittery. Randomizing size gives you a really nice effect. Finally, let's randomize our pitch knob. With your pitch quantized, you'll create harmonically coherent clouds of pitches or even melodies, depending on the source material and the quantized settings. I really like that. All right, let's use the crossfader. I'll move it over to B and we'll hear the settings change. If I hold A and press B, I'll copy the settings from A to B. I can also do that to any numbered sample slot and copy my A or B settings to them, which is great for quickly creating banks. Now I'll make changes to B here to sound different, and when I'm done, I can crossfade morph between the two settings, which is super cool. Let's record another sample and try some other stuff. We have 3 inputs at the top, X, Y, and Z, which we can use to modulate settings in Multigrain. So if I was to put a sine wave into X and press the X button, I can then turn a knob and assign that modulation to that knob. On top of that, each crossfader destination, A and B, can have different amounts of modulation on different knobs, which is wild. Let's record something new and try something else. I'll grab some signals out of OCHD to modulate this recording from rings. Love that sort of seasick, weird, granular retriggering. Here's a recording from the Bufako Onoroi, just to show you something extra weird, becoming even more weird. One of my favorite things to do with Multigrain is have it work with sweeps. There's a demo later with wavetable sweeps, but for now, let's record a new one in via Atlantics. While recording, I want to get a good timbre shift throughout the recording. Now with the sweep recorded, I can assign the crossfader to go from the beginning of the sample to the end. And now, with a synced grain speed and a percussive grain shape, I can start to create a customized synth sound. By putting 1 volt per octave into the modulation input and turning up its effect on the pitch control all the way, I can play the sample as a melodic sequence just like a synth. And I can then move through the sound with the crossfader for big timbre changes. So that's the basics of multigrain, enough for you to understand the important stuff. Now we get to dive in to having some fun. Let's jump into my various experiments with this wonderful module and see what it can do. The first set of demos is a project of ambient pad sounds. I wanted to give you a sense of how this could work as a sort of ambient techno layer, with the processing of the samples being just out of recognizable rhythm range. With a big enough timbre change from start to end of the pad, you can have a really big canvas to work with. We're sending some modulation into the X, Y, and Z inputs, and that will change per sample and per scene, A or B. This next demo is a bank of small percussive sounds generated with the beat surfing random metal VST. I made a ton of one-shots and created a few banks with samples that matched up nicely. With rate all the way down, you can trigger a sample slot with a gate input at the top of the module. From there, you can manually select a sample by pressing a slot, or you can use CV into the select input to choose one. But if you put the same gate into the next input, it automatically goes to the next slot every time and sends that signal into the gate input and triggers the sample. And the crossfader still works on all samples at once. Let's go back to the gate input and use a voltage offset generator to pick which slot plays back. This one only has 6 slots, so it has its own natural polymeter. And there's a randomized quantized pitch on some of the slots, so it kind of makes its own little melody. Yeah. These next demos are samples I made where it starts out as a vocal atmosphere and fades into something else. Some of them are orchestral instruments, some of them are percussion, and some of them are just weird. Because of our ability to smoothly move through samples with grains, this allows for some really cool stuff. This one is moving on its own because of the scan amount, and if we put 1 volt per octave signal into X and assign it to pitch, we can transpose it. but you'll need to make sure that the notes you want to play are available in the quant page if quantize is on. Here's one I made into a rhythmic pulse, and with distortion, it really, really sounds rad. With a little bit of creative planning, Multigrain can do amazing things. This demo is all about chord progressions. Each sample slot is a different chord progression from Native Instruments' Playbox. I have the crossfader set to move through them, and in some cases, change the settings along the way. With careful planning and adjustment, you can play back your chords in real time how you choose. I have the grains synced, so you'll hear them rhythmically pulse according to the grain rate, size, and shape. And adding random to the grain size, in this case, is a great way to add just a tiny bit of cool variation. Okay, let's take a quick breather with some beautiful drones. This bank here is made up of 8 different drones from Contact tuned to C. I have pitch coming in on X, and I'm sending the output of the module to a VCA to shape the volume, essentially using Multigrain as a melodic sample instrument. You can make banks of these and have a huge variety of timbres on hand for a performance. I've added some piano and cello in Ableton for vibes. Okay, this is one of my favorite things to do with Multigrain. We mentioned processing sweeps earlier. Here I have 8 wavetable sweeps that travel through the wavetable as 11-second audio files. There are 8 different ones in the preset. I have the rate all the way down, so only the gate triggers the sample, and the crossfader is set to move from the start to the end of each sweep. I'm sending in pitch and gate to trigger the sample slot and make a melodic sequence. Let's listen to each one real quick. Notice those ratchets? You don't have to leave the rate all the way down when using gate or next. You can turn up rate and have cool ratchets too. Okay, now here comes the fun. Let's move from using gate in to next in. Now every time we play a note, we select a new wavetable, and the crossfader still works for huge timbre shifts. So goddamn cool. And we can use CV in to make pattern selection sequences as well. One of the questions I always ask myself with modules like this is, can it break juggle? Can it breakcore? The answer here is kinda. I have a bank of break chops at 170 BPM, and I've set them up to play a square-shaped grain back at just the right length for a single slice of an eighth note. I'm going to use the Acid Rage constellation to trigger them and Maestro to select which sample slot plays back. So that's fully high voltage, and that's fully low voltage. Now I'll try a half-note ramp. Now I can play around with different timing and different shapes here and get different break juggles. You can still put some modulation in and assign it to a knob and have fun. Yeah, so it can kind of do it, but not exactly how I would like. It's still fun though. This got me thinking, what if I just put a whole break in there? Could I get that V-synth style time stretching? The answer is yes, but it's very sensitive. Let's move our crossfader over to this scene where we're completely frozen. Now I'll use this voltage offset from the F8R to try and dial in a half-speed version of the sample. Okay, I think I got it. The reason I'm using the fader here is because I needed extra resolution that the module's knob range didn't have to dial in the right amount. It worked, but it's really fiddly. So yeah, we can pitch shift now, which is super cool. So yeah, neat trick, but not super viable. All right, so trance gates, they're so back. A trance gate is a rhythmic gating of a sound, and there's a few ways to do it. You can just use a rhythmic volume envelope, but the classic tracker way is to rhythmically re-trigger the sample and offset its start time over a few bars. We can do that with Multigrain, set up some rhythmically synced grains, and turn the scan to travel through the sample slowly. adding a little extra grain size to the B scene and crossfading between them as you go gets you a 16th to 8th note or 16th to quarter note sort of vibe. So you can play this in real time. Let's give it a go. That's so fun. Okay, let's wrap it up. This is just a little sample I really love the sound of in Multigrain, and I went and added a beat and some other stuff to it. I hope this has helped you understand why Multigrain is cool and special. I absolutely adore the crossfade concept here, and I think it elevates Multigrain to a whole new level. The ability to do classic granular, cloudy mush and super sharp rhythmic stuff in one module is fantastic. And because Intellijel didn't skimp out on how many projects and presets you can have on here, it really becomes a friend to anyone in the studio or in performance. I'm going to try to build a set around it later this year. Thanks so much for watching. I hope your little grains are doing okay, and I'll talk to you in the next video. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.